Could this tool help you retire rich? Well, this is a topic I definitely think we should have a quick chat about. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sugar Mama's Fire Play, where together, every Monday morning, we ignite our financial journey, staying inspired, empowered, and educated with all of our financial goals and dreams. I am your host, financial planner, Canna Campbell, and today we're diving into a tool that has the power to potentially transform one of your biggest and possibly most important goals. That is retirement. And when I say transform, I really do mean it. Transform it being a goal potentially floating around in your head into reality. Now, the tool that I'm talking about is a self-managed super fund. So what is a self-managed super fund? Well, simply put, a self-managed super fund is a private super fund that you manage yourself. Unlike an industry super fund such as like a Hester or Host Plus, or retail super funds like BT, Asgard, MLC, where your money is handled by professionals, a self-managed super fund allows you to have pretty much complete control over your retirement money. That is, deciding where you want it to be invested and how and when. And if it sounds like a big job with lots of responsibilities, you are most definitely right. So who is a self-managed super fund suited to? Well, I would say that it is ideal for those who really desire complete control over their money, that is their superannuation money. And they want control of their superannuation and retirement portfolios. So during accumulation phase where money is going in, and then, of course, during retirement phase where money is going out and you're enjoying the fruits of all of your hard work. Typically, it is for experienced investors who think they can do a better job than, say, the retail or industry super funds. Also, small business owners who would really like to use their self-managed super fund money to maybe purchase the commercial premise that their business runs out of. There's also families or even sometimes friends who want to invest together, but only obviously to a maximum of 6. Or just anyone who's got a really clear financial strategy that wants to invest their retirement money or their superannuation money in a very different way that sort of breaks the traditional investment assets. Perhaps they have a really unique skill or eye for investing in art, or they know what great antique cars to purchase and maybe on sell to make a profit. However, the strict rules with a self-managed super fund is whatever you invest in, they have to be seen as something that is driving and generating income and, of course, has an investment opportunity with capital growth. And, of course, they do not have or do not receive any personal benefit from those particular assets. So you can't be going and hanging that beautiful investment art in your home if it's through your super fund. Now, as touched on, there are lots and lots of risks and responsibilities that come from a self-managed super fund. And as the saying goes, with great control comes great responsibility. All members of a self-managed super fund share the same duties and must adhere to the law. These responsibilities bring potential risks, big risks. So if something goes wrong, there is no special compensation scheme or access to the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, AFCA. So if the money is lost due to theft or fraud, that is bad luck. That's not their safety net to go and get help. Also, personal liability lies with all the fund decisions, even if you are getting professionals to help you along the way. If something goes wrong, you bear the consequences. And that doesn't matter whether you've used a lawyer, an accountant, and a financial planner. It all comes back to you. Another thing to consider is the investments may not yield the expected returns. Whilst a lot of people think they may be great at picking investments, you may in fact invest in a dud, which is then going to leave you with the issues of having to explain to the other members how certain investments have performed, which can then sometimes obviously cause further issues. And then, of course, there is a lot of ongoing fund management. Now, on that note, let's talk about the time involved and the costs. So managing a self-managed super fund is a substantial commitment. It really does demand your time and often involves considerable costs, even if I say so myself, and not to mention paperwork. So you need to understand that when it comes to time and cost, you've got to consider filing tax returns for the self-managed super fund. And yes, that is on top of your own individual returns. So it's almost like doubling your work when it comes to tax time. Ensuring all of the audits for the self-managed super fund are not only conducted, but conducted on time. You've also got to attend to all of the required compliance and administration. And then you've got to do your own research for what investments you want to consider and eventually go ahead with. You've also got to stay informed about all the superannuation and tax laws, which change on a regular basis, particularly around budget time. And then you've got to develop and revise an investment strategy, which has got to be documented and revised and revisited on a regular basis with all members signing off on. And of course, you've got to hold and document all of those trustee meetings. Oh yes, of course. And there's also all the accounting, record keeping, statement filing, which also needs to be approved by a self-managed super fund auditor. So yes, that is a lot of work. But for people who have a self-managed super fund and love it and use it wisely, this is actually all worth it for them. Now, how much should you have to start a self-managed super fund? So how much do you really need to have in superannuation to actually start up a self-managed super fund? Well, the general rule of thumb is a minimum account balance, that is a combined minimum account balance, of $250,000. However, from my personal experience and looking at what the fees and charges are, I would probably be a little bit more conservative and say probably closer to the $500,000 figure. But that's just my personal opinion in trying to justify the fees. Now, the reason why the general rule of thumb is probably closer to $250,000 is the same reason as mine, but it's because obviously the startup fees and the ongoing fees can be quite high. And because they are normally dollar-based rather than percentage-based, they can run the risk of really eating into your superannuation account balance, particularly when you start up initially. So you really need to run your numbers and get lots of quotes. And of course, there are lots of different options that you can consider and look at, and obviously services that may vary in price points, especially from an upfront fee point of view and an ongoing fee point of view. So shop around and see what levels of service are right for you and whether you're comfortable with those fees and how they all stack up in comparison to your account balance. However, I will say this, your focus in starting up a self-managed fund shouldn't actually be about the fees and whether you can afford it or not necessarily, but it should be more about whether it's actually suitable for you in the first place. If it is, obviously then proceed on to look at the fees. But as you are now aware, there's a lot of responsibility, risk and time on your shoulders that comes with a self-managed super fund. So is a self-managed super fund right for you? Okay, these are the signs that I would say indicate yes, that a self-managed super fund is worth considering. Number one, you are ready to actively manage your financial affairs. You have experience in managing your own investment portfolio out of superannuation and you actually genuinely enjoy it. You understand all the responsibilities and risks that come from managing a self-managed super fund as a trustee. You also understand the role that a self-managed super fund takes up in your life. And a self-managed super fund aligns with your immediate and long-term financial goals. And the numbers actually do prove to be cost-effective and better value for money. And then finally, you have the time, the energy, and the effort into not just setting up your self-managed super fund, but running it on a long-term basis. And then finally, you like the idea of potentially utilising the fact that you can borrow to invest through your self-managed super fund, and that is in positive alignment to your wealth accumulation goals, but obviously in the legal and responsible way. Now, I will touch on the concept of borrowing to invest through your self-managed super fund in a second. But I just want to quickly share this with you. Quite often in my financial planning practice, I would have a new client to come and see me, and they would literally turn up to my office and say that look, they've got this self-managed super fund that their accountant recommended years and years ago, and it was been sitting in cash, for the last 5, 6, 7, sometimes even longer. And they would be sort of looking at me going, yeah, we're not sure why our accountant set it up, but they did. And look, it's just been sitting at a term deposit or an online savings account, and we should probably do something with this. Now, that is probably a red flag. If you don't understand why your accountant has set up a self-managed super fund for you, you probably shouldn't have it. And if your self-managed super fund is sitting in cash for the wrong reasons, and when I say wrong reasons, I mean because you just don't know what to do with the money, or you haven't actually, well, not so much not do with the money, but you haven't actually set down an investment strategy, that is something to really consider whether the self-managed super fund is actually the right tool for you. And that is when you go back and look at all the numbers and all the investment options and where you want to invest and doing a risk profile to see whether actually an industry fund or a retail fund actually may be easier and better for you. But the thing is, having all your superannuation money sitting in cash may not necessarily be the right thing. And obviously there is the strategic element where people are holding a large amount of money in their self-managed super fund in cash because they're waiting for the right investment opportunity, or perhaps it's part of their asset allocation. But what I'm talking about is the people who are just mindlessly just keeping their self-managed super fund in cash because they've just completely neglected looking at their super fund and the investment strategy behind it. So what I'm trying to say to you, if you get a self-managed super fund, use it properly or lose it quickly. Remember, they're expensive to set up and they're expensive to run. And don't be ashamed of winding it down if it's actually not the right thing for you. All right, what do I like most about this tool? Because I did say at the beginning of this episode that it could potentially transform one of your biggest and most important goals into a reality. Well, a self-managed super fund, as I touched on before, can borrow to invest. And that's something that's not necessarily available with a traditional super fund structure unless you're investing in products that already have a gearing element within it. So a self-managed super fund, as I said, can borrow money to purchase a property. However, it must be done under very strict conditions referred to as a limited recourse borrowing arrangement, an LRBA. Plus, there are very, very strict requirements. That is, you must meet the sole purpose test, which means it is solely for providing retirement benefits to their members. It also cannot be acquired from a related party of a fund. So you can't go and buy your mother's investment property or buy their house through their self-managed super fund. Also, it cannot be lived in by a fund member or any fund member's family. So again, you can't be buying an apartment through your self-managed super fund and renting it to your sister. And also, the rent has to be, on that note, at market level. You can't be giving people mates rates. So it must meet the sole purpose test of solely providing retirement benefits to fund members. The property cannot be acquired from a related party of a fund member. So you can't be going and buying your mum's house or your dad's investment property through the self-managed super fund. That is not possible. It also cannot be lived in by a fund member or any fund member's family. So you can't go and use your self-managed super fund to borrow to go and buy, say, an apartment and then have your sister living in there. And then, of course, it cannot be rented by a fund member or any fund member's family. So these are very strict rules. And on that note of rent, it also can't be discounted mates rates rent. The rent has to be at market value. But as you know from listening to my various other episodes, borrowing can help increase the opportunity for potential returns. And this is due to the fact that the larger capital investment you can use than in comparison with, say, your own existing superannuation balance alone. However, borrowing to invest is obviously a very high-risk strategy, only to be used at the right time and for the right reasons. So if you want to learn more about how to manage and handle proactively these risks, I have linked in my podcast notes the episode where I talk about borrowing to invest and the practical, sensible, wise things that you can do to help manage these risks in a proactive way, in an intelligent, sensible way. So if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, all right, I could potentially use my superannuation money with my brother or my sister or even my parents or potentially a friend and start acquiring investment properties through perhaps an element of gearing, which is borrowing to invest, you could be getting quite excited. So your next question might be, well, how do I get started? So, all right, where do you start? Well, you need to get an accountant, a lawyer, and a financial planner. Investing in these experts is highly recommended because it will help ensure that your self-managed super fund is set up correctly the right way and will reduce the risk of fees and fines potentially further down the track. And trust me, I have seen plenty of self-managed super funds actually set up incorrectly and are technically uncompliant, exposing them to potential penalties. Now, would I get a self-managed super fund? Personally, I think a self-managed super fund for the right people is an incredibly powerful tool to help build your wealth and achieve those financial goals and dreams in a very efficient way. And if you do your job correctly as a self-managed super fund trustee, it really does force you to get involved with your superannuation money and make some life-changing decisions. It really forces you to go deep and really immerse yourself in this world. And as I like to say, what gets monitored gets made. I also particularly love that self-managed super fund can borrow to invest. So for people desperately wanting to get into the property market or maybe add more property to their property portfolio, a self-managed super fund can be the solution for a lot of people. However, as you're aware, there are lots of rules and regulations around this, as you can't live in that property, nor can you rent it out, to a family member or someone who's related to you, and it's got to be, as you know, at market rent. But the ability to include an equally powerful and, of course, risky tool for someone who is experienced and educated when it comes to investing and borrowing to invest, yes, I am impressed. I like what a self-managed super fund can offer. However, the truth is that a large amount of self-managed super funds, as I touched on, are just sitting in cash, which is sad that they're not making the most of this tool properly and possibly wasting money in fees, which doesn't make me happy. So would I get a self-managed super fund? Well, no. And this is not advice or even product advice. I'm not for or against. I'm just sharing my own personal reasons right now for saying no. And that is because I'm happy. I'm very grateful for where my superannuation money is currently held and invested. I am very happy with the fees that I pay that are less than 0.5% a year. So all of my reporting is done. I don't need to worry about ever breaking any laws. I can see the value of my superannuation money at any time. I get all my statements. It keeps me informed, educated, and up to date with what's going on in my superannuation money. So for me, paying those fees is exceptional value for money. And I am so glad that I invested my time many, many years ago to get my superannuation account set up correctly. And because of that, my superannuation money has actually done really well. So for me to justify making any changes at this point in time to my superannuation account and switching it over to a self-managed super fund, because obviously that would trigger taxes, it would also be buy-sell costs, like brokerage, be time out of the market, all sorts of other things, including potentially any insurance policies attached to my super fund. For me, it's just not worth it. But actually, on top of that, I'm time poor. I already have a lot on my plate with my work, my kids, my family, my partner. I'm already juggling so much already, and I really don't want to add to my plate. So I guess for me, whilst I love a self-managed super fund, I'm impressed by it, I think it's right for a lot of people, it's just not for me right now. It's not an efficient use of my time. So for this point in my life, I would say probably no to setting up a self-managed super fund. And again, I really want to reiterate that triggering of tax to set up a self-managed super fund, because obviously you've got to move money across from other superannuation accounts to set this up in the first time, is something that you really need to add into the numbers as to whether it's worth it. And for me, the numbers just wouldn't stack up. And as I said, the time commitment isn't just there for me. Now, would I get one in the future? Perhaps. I like the idea that I could borrow to buy a commercial property through a self-managed super fund, which actually has been one of my financial goals for quite some time now. And it is something that would most definitely help me achieve my retirement goals and allow me to actually look at incorporating a sensible, conservative gearing strategy. And I have to say, one of the reasons why I haven't been able to purchase a commercial property yet is I just don't have enough money ready to invest. But if I was to look at a self-managed super fund and a conservative gearing level, that actually may be the solution to allow this goal to actually become a reality for me. But right now, it's just not the right time. But like everything in life, I will keep my mind open, and I really appreciate knowing what tools and strategies exist so that when the time is right, I will know it and I can jump on this idea if and when it is appropriate in the future. So as I wrap up today's episode, self-managed super funds, when used in the right way, are definitely a powerful tool in helping you achieve your financial goals and dreams. They give you control. They are a very versatile tool as well, and it allows you to invest in a whole range of different things that you wouldn't normally be able to access through an industry super fund or a retail super fund. And it really does expand your toolkit to build wealth more efficiently so that you can potentially retire sooner and potentially wealthier, particularly when you consider a conservative gearing strategy for the right reasons. However, as you're aware, it is crucial to weigh up the benefits of control against the responsibilities, costs, and risks. But if you are willing to commit, you are happy to educate yourself or continue on with your educational path, and can access professional guidance, a self-managed super fund could most possibly be your pathway to a more secure financial future. All right, everyone, that wraps up today's episode. I actually have a bonus episode, though, coming out for you this week. I'm going to be touching base with Adam McCabe from Blue Lantern Home Loans, and I'm going to be picking his brain around the idea and concept of borrowing to invest, because there are different conditions, different loopholes, different hoops of fire even to go through when it comes to borrowing to invest through your self-managed super fund. But he has some very valuable insights as to the interest rates that you should be paying. And in fact, if you have a self-managed super fund that has a loan, this is definitely going to be an episode that you're going to want to listen to, because he could save you a huge amount of money, because this financial landscape is most definitely changing. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me this morning on today's episode. If you have any questions or thoughts to share, or actually have a topic that you would really like me to talk about, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you could leave me a rating and a review, I would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, remember to stay curious, empowered, and keep that financial fire burning bright. This is Sugar Mama's Fire Play.